Tonight's class is question and answer, and as always, these answers that I give you are not the gospel. They're not written down in scripture anywhere. I mean, some of them I've read, but it's my answer. This is not the answer. I don't actually believe that there is the answer, but I'm gonna give you my answer from my experience and give you something to think about, or at least ponder for a second. So your questions. Lucas.
Could you please talk about the difference between discernment and judgment?
The difference between discernment and judgment? Well, I don't know what the dictionary definition is, but I'll give you what I think of when you ask that question. So, judgment for me has a very specific negative connotation. And when I say specific, it's not actually specific. It's like what we do all day long is judgment, right? So I think of discernment in this context as being, as being like the first step, recognizing something and recognizing like this is black and this is white. Judgment is I hate black and white's okay. It's like some kind of opinion that you're forming about it. And that's really what we do. We say, like we go into the ice cream shop and we see all these flavors and I discern, well, here are all the flavors. And I see chocolate and I'm like, I'm really in the mood for chocolate today. I love it. And so it gets in my head and it becomes this whole thing. It's rolling around in there and I'm forming all kinds of additional thoughts about it and feelings and emotions. And then I see vanilla and I say, oh, vanilla is terrible. It's so bland and who likes vanilla? And then I see this guy ordering vanilla and I think that's a real idiot over there. I don't know what that guy's problem is. That's all judgment. Discernment is simply, this is chocolate, that's vanilla, right? So you should be able to discern things and you should be able to judge things, but the goal, one of our goals in practice is to be able to turn off judgment. So in meditation, for example, you should turn off judgment. And this is really what we're practicing, is I can discern if I'm inhaling or exhaling, and I can discern the physical sensation in my body, right? I can recognize that. But judgment is when it becomes like, oh, that was too short of an inhale, or that exhale was too loud. I hope other people didn't hear me. Is Sifu listening to me right now? And all of that extra stuff that we go into where we form opinions about it and we form, emotions. So judgment is like an extra process that we don't usually need, right? And sometimes you do need it, but be able to do both and be able to turn it off. Other question? Leah, I know you got a whole page of questions. Give me one.
I just thought of this one, but is there a difference between practicing with emotional content versus emotional angst? And is emotional angst part of emotional content?
Great question. So what's the difference between, well, your question is there, and I'm saying yes, there is. So what's the difference between emotional content and angst? And is angst part of emotional content? And I've talked a few times about emotional content. To be honest, I'm not familiar with angst. So I can't say. I'm just kidding. But honestly, it's been a while since angst has played a prominent role in my emotional life. And it's on purpose. If we talk about angst or anxiety or being upset, anger, sadness, something like that, this is all emotion, and I guess you could look at the concept of emotional content as in like emotions are a rainbow, and if you put them all together, all the colors in the rainbow form black, and like all the emotions together form emotional content. That's not really the way that I look at it. And I'm not saying that that's wrong. But I would say if you can discern angst as part of your emotional content, and it's like a kind of a thing that's there that's recognizable, then it's going to lead to judgment. And you're going to say to yourself, why am I feeling angst when I'm practicing? So really, I think of emotional content as being just kind of like a homogeneous emotional state, which is very powerful and excited and very much like intense and in the moment, without there being this added component of it's like specifically angst or specifically anger or anything else. Now, there are a lot of people who will say, you need to practice angry. You need to be angry when you punch. You need to be angry when you kick and throw somebody, because it's the only way that you're going to get real power. I disagree. I think that, again, it can be part of the whole emotional soup that you're practicing with, but if you are able to attach to a specific emotion like angst, then that is really going to be a distraction. And instead, it's like when Bruce Lee talks about emotional content, he means your punches shouldn't be like this, like I'm just kind of here as a zombie going through the motions. I've got to pour myself into it. And yet you can pour yourself into it without it taking such a specific form in your mind. So you should come to practice when you are experiencing angst and anger and sadness and upset of any kind, and you should be able to let that go. And it might come up in class, and maybe I yell something at you and it triggers some memory from your childhood or whatever it is that causes you to feel angst. Or you walk in with it and you just remember, I got to deal with this when I leave class. And I want you to be able to transform that in the moment in a single punch into emotional content that is more, I guess there's more of an openness to it. It's very focused, it's very intense, but it's not a specific emotion that you're gonna go off on a rant with in your own head and start forming judgments and attachments to it. It's like when you're humming along with practice like this, and then you spike and then come back down. So you spike with emotional intensity, emotional content, you spike with physical action, like actually a tension or a speed in your movement, and then you have to come back down. If you spike with anger, it's very difficult to come back down. You'll spike and you'll stay up here. Like most people when they practice and they're grappling, for example, and they tense and they just stay tense the whole time. You got to be able to be relaxed and flow, and then spike and then back to relaxed and flow. Emotional the same way. Other question? Dina.
I have discovered that when I do my nighttime meditations, it almost always takes me on a normal day about 18 minutes to get to the place where I'm actually able to take a pretty long sequence of breaths without thoughts flinging around. And
That sounds good to me. 18 minutes.
Really? Well, it's like 18 minutes, sometimes 19. But what happens is but the timer goes off. A lot of times I set the timer for 20 minutes.
The timer's 20 minutes, right?
Yeah.
That's why.
Right.
You get right to the end and you're like, I better start meditating.
That's a little bit of it. That is. But even when the timer is set for 30 minutes, it seems like it's about that long. Or if it's 15 minutes, I just won't get there.
Yeah.
But my question is, what happens a lot of times is I get like that last 2 really great minutes, the timer goes off, and I want to keep meditating. So I'll meditate until I notice myself completely off track, and then I stop. And is that a bad thing? Am I like training myself to do something that I shouldn't be doing there, or?
This is tough. So there's a lot of great stuff happening here. One is that you're actually getting to a point within a meditation where you're experiencing a couple of breaths where you're not thinking. which I would suggest that a lot of people have not even accomplished in years of meditation. And it's possible that what you think is breaths without thinking is actually thinking, but you're not recognizing it. But you've been meditating for a while, and you seem like a pretty decent person. So I'm going to assume that your meditations are good. And let's just go with that. So let's say I've gotten myself used to, at the 18-minute mark, I'm good. And that's when I'll really slip into a decent period of meditation. And, if you set it for 30 minutes, does it kind of like go into a deep state at 18 and then kind of come back up and do this during the 30 minutes? Or does it stay there for a while and then...
The longer I meditate, the more the ratio of long sections to...
Yeah, great. This is all good. So this is part of the natural progression of your meditation. You're going to start off meditating for 10 minutes, and the whole meditation is crap. It's like I'm not relaxed at all. Or at a certain point, you'll come to the realization that actually I've just been sitting and thinking the whole time. And then as your meditations get longer, they'll get deeper, with consistency and all of this, you'll start to recognize that I do get to a point of clarity and of real calm and peace before the end of the meditation, which is great. And it might happen right at the end. And some of that is because I've trained my body to be able to sit for 20 minutes, and like right around the end of that becomes the limit. And it's like some of it is, I know that it's the end. Like you actually know on a subconscious level, usually if you've been meditating for 20 minutes consistently, you know when that is. And so either you'll start to get fidgety around the end, or you might have this kind of experience where you'll know that it's the end is nigh, and so you really dig deep and you go. All of this is great, and it's a part of the process of your meditation practice. Your real question, though, is when I get into that deeper state and then my timer goes off and I continue to meditate, first of all, is that a good thing? Yes. Is it a bad thing that then I wait until I start to lose my meditation again and then I stand up and leave? That's a little bit more questionable, because you might be training yourself to then say, when my meditation gets bad, when I start to have more thoughts and get more antsy, then I just leave the meditation and go. Some people say that's totally fine. You listen to your body, you listen to the state of your mind, and when you can sit and be relaxed, you're meditating, and when you're done, you're done. I personally don't like that often, maybe once in a while, but you should very much get yourself into the habit of sitting through that fidgety feeling, the feeling of my meditation is starting to go awry and I'm not focusing on the breath. I'm just sitting and thinking. Because it's like in the beginning, any of you guys who have meditated for any length of time, you recognize that you sit and your ego gets right in the way and it starts to go like, you got to get up and do something. What about that thing that you have to get done for work? What about that call that you got to make, or your body's going to start to ache, your body's going to start to itch, and your mind and your body are kind of fighting against the act of sitting and meditating, because sitting and meditating is on some level like death. It's like death of the ego in the moment, and your ego does not like that. Your ego doesn't want to die. Your ego is grasping on for dear life to being in control. And so when you sit and meditate, there are going to be forces arrayed against you from within. And some of them are going to seem really innocuous, and they're going to seem like little things like, I got this little itch, I'm just going to scratch it. Or it's going to be like, oh, I got to wake up and just quick, make a little note for myself to do something later on. And I'm not saying that you should never do that, but I am saying if you do that very often, and you do that more often than not especially, you're training yourself, you're training your mind really to give in. And if you give in to those little desires to move or to think or to whatever, then they're going to start to come up more often and more easily. And this is your monkey mind at work. What you have to do is just kind of ignore your monkey mind and come back to the breath. So it may be that I sit and I meditate and I'm really getting into it. The timer goes off, I want to keep going. I've had that experience plenty of times, and I'll keep going. And what will happen is very often, soon after I get into that deep state and feeling really good, I'm in this groove or this kind of flow with the meditation, then the mind will start to kick back in and the ego's like, yeah, but your timer went off, you should get up and do something, whatever. And then I just say, no, I'm going to sit through this one too. So I'll at least sit through one more active brain section of meditation and let myself get back down into it. And then I might say like, okay, I've been sitting, now I've gotten through a few of those mind waves, and now I'm going to stand up and be done. And some of that's great because it's going to help you take that state of consciousness out into everyday life more easily than if your meditation is really deep and then you come up and it's like you're in this kind of normal state of mind and then you decide like, well, my meditation's bad, I'm just going to be done with it. Then that's kind of the state that you take into the rest of your life. So both is okay, but don't, as you kind of described and understood from your question, don't train yourself to give up with the meditation when it gets tough. Even if it is like I've gone further and deeper and longer than I decided I was going to. That part's great. The other part is iffy. Other question. Do we have any questions? Nobody's asking questions? Wake up, people. Leah, what's your second one?
One more, it's a practice question.
Mm-hmm.
What would you recommend to build up your endurance and strength for free grappling? Because there's no set rhythm like in Keyhone and strikes.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it can go fast and then you don't have time to breathe. I sometimes swim, but that's not an option when it gets cold and when you have a new tattoo.
Okay. This is a borderline question for meditation class, Leah. You're asking about endurance during free grappling, so I have to massage the question a little bit and get somewhere deep with it. The question is, what do I recommend for building up endurance when free grappling? It's different from doing Keyhone. It's different from any other activity, and it will be. And honestly, people come in and they are triathletes. They do Ironmen. They are professional athletes, and they come in and to do this kind of class is a more specific kind of cardio. For example, you can go outside and run around, and like if I go run, I get tired as hell. I hate running. That's why I know how to fight. But the kind of cardio that we do in class, I can do really well, and it's just my body has become accustomed to it, and it's subconsciously I can do this and get a lot more out of my body than I can just going out and run. And if I ran around a lot more than I did martial arts, I'd be much better at that kind of cardio. And you're right that there is a different kind of endurance required even from different drills within our practice. So in Keyhone, it's more of a at a set pace, at a set rhythm, unless I'm messing with you guys that night. And you can kind of manage it that way. And then when you're grappling or even sparring, for example, you're really feeding off of your partner's energy, and there's this energy that you create together. So I will say this, since I've got to make this a deep question and a deep answer. One thing that you should really do is focus on connecting with your partner's energy. And when I say connecting, I mean first you have to be obviously relaxed, physically and mentally relaxed, emotionally relaxed. You can just set that angst aside. You should work on being sensitive to actually then feeling what your partner is giving you. On a very simple level, you recognize if your partner pushes you and you push back, it's this kind of energy. It's force against force. Versus if my partner pushes and I pull, I'm accepting their energy and I'm playing with it. And this is really what we want to do is play with our partner's energy. When Sifu Brown went to practice Tai Chi, I think it was in China, and the translator was explaining the idea of push hands, and they call it playing push hands. And Sifu Brown had this connotation of playing like it's a sport, it's like me versus you, and it's like a competition. We said, no, it's like playing like a child plays with a toy. And you're playing with your partner's energy like it's exciting and fun, and you're totally in the moment, and it's not me versus them at all. It's as if a toddler is playing in that moment. This connection to your partner's energy, this relaxation, acceptance of the energy, is something that we should strive for and work on in everything in life. Like, there are very few people who can get through life without dealing with people. If you are one of those people, then good for you. But let's just say you're normal and you have to deal with people. To be able to accept energy and use it like push hands, just like grappling should feel like push hands. I should be totally aware of and able to pull with my partner's push or push with my partner's pull, steer their energy, and the same thing should happen in a conversation. Like, how many times do our conversations turn into arguments? Because you're not doing verbal push hands, you're doing verbal angst punching people. it's like it turns into this push against push versus using your partner's energy. And in a conversation, for example, it starts off with me actually listening to my partner. So I go into that conversation without bringing in any of my own baggage, without coming in with preconceptions, and that's like akin to being relaxed, physically, mentally relaxed. Then I can actually listen and I accept what's coming from my partner. Instead of me thinking about what I'm going to say back to them, I actually just listen to what they say. And then I can take that and it becomes a conversation. And maybe I'm trying to convince my partner of something, or maybe I'm just listening and accepting. All of this is great. Practice should feel like a conversation. So when you're sparring, it shouldn't just be one person beating up the other person. Just like in grappling, it shouldn't be this person just completely destroying the other one. It should be a conversation back and forth. That's how you get better. And really, this is like the way to go with everything in life, because life has a rhythm to it. Life has the ups and downs, and life has forces that will come at you, and your choice is either to brace yourself and fight against it and push against the push, or you can accept it and play with it. And sometimes you just need to stand your ground and not get pushed over. And very often when we do that, it can be different. It can be accepting the energy, play with it, and then spit it back out. So this is very much what we do when we practice meditation, right? You're gonna feel like a pull or a push of your mind or of an emotion, and you're gonna want to fight against it. And this is like when you start thinking, and then you think to yourself, stop thinking, you're supposed to be meditating, what's wrong with you? As opposed to accepting the thought and just letting it go right out the other end, and then coming back to the breath. It should really feel that way. Meditation should feel more like an acceptance and a playing of the energy, or playing with of the energy of your mind, than it should feel like forcing stuff out of your head. So let's practice that now. Sit comfortably.